Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining me here, moving up from co-host 3 to co-host 2. What the heck is this? It's Zach Flash Celadonia. I don't know what happened, man. We had you slotted in, and then there was a clerical error. How's it going, man?
Oh, yeah, I already thought I was co-host too, so this is news to me, but I'll take the delayed praise, better late than never. Thanks very much, I guess. But yeah, we shot yesterday, didn't work.
We don't talk about that now.
About it. I said, it's a rite of passage. I've seen people be like, oh no, the show didn't record. Pretty sure it happened to you and Brian before.
Oh yeah.
Never had it happen to me. I was like, wow, that must really suck. Now that it's happened, I can tell you it does suck, but on the bright side, I really didn't say anything funny, and I feel like I only made like 2 or 3 good points. So we can bring him back up today, and maybe today I'll be a little bit funnier.
I made a lot more good points than that, and they were all gone. Actually, mine recorded. It was your audio track that did not record. So
yeah,
it would have just been
story of my life.
Yeah, just watching you and just listening to me. And it's like, yeah, no, I didn't want to do this solo, even though I got the fresh new era sideline cap. I get to wear it again. I went to wear it yesterday as the debut. And, obviously I'm making the joke about co-host 2, co-host 3 because of the shuffling of the quarterback depth chart, which we didn't get into too much detail of. So we didn't really lose a whole lot of those points because we were trying to say to the Steelers contenders or pretenders. We didn't really care who was starting. We felt maybe a little more upside with Kenny Pickett versus Mitchell Trubisky, who was just named the one of the co-captains of the offense. Pretty much after we got the
way over my head. That went way over my head. I wasn't drawing the connection between co-host 2, co-host 3, and quarterback 2, quarterback 3. But that makes Brian Mason and me Kenny Pickett. Oh. So I'm all for that. That works perfectly.
Let me tell you. And Mark Madden was going, and very often, like his name is always said in vain on this program, and he would just call us bloggers or whatever.
It's like Voldemort. I don't even say his name.
I know, but he did say it. It made a lot more sense with Mason as a 2. And then I had like this whole tweet with the Charlie Day thing from Pacific Rim where he's drawing out all the scenarios, kind of like one of those crime walls, the investigations.
I know
the
that
CSI
meme's getting
things.
a lot of burn these days because of the Steeler quarterback thing, and also because of the whole Harry Styles spitting or not spitting on Chris Pine at that the movie premiere for Don't Worry, Darling. I've been seeing a lot of the Charlie Day memes because everybody's trying to draw other conclusions about Steelers quarterbacks and Harry Styles spit.
Yeah. And let me see here. I'm going to pull up. I was going to actually pull up one of the clever tweets that I had, or that specific one. There's one that I have floating around somewhere in the interwebs that I think I will try and bring up. And that was the Mitchell Trubisky stats. And we've been getting called Mitch Trubisky haters a little too often on the program. And I think the main point of this is that it's ride or die. I'm a Steelers fan. It doesn't make me terribly excited to have a quarterback who started for 4 years, was a backup for a whole year. I mean, I'm ripping on Deshaun Watson having not played in forever. Mitchell Trubisky hasn't played in forever either. It's the consistency with me. See, I'm not just going to think that magically that this guy, we'll put it this way. If Watson was in black and gold, he would still be a very suspect, very sus character this day and age based on all of the off-field things with him. And that's all the more I'm going to say about that. But you get where I'm coming from. And when Mitch was signed, I said, hey, he was the guy who was a free agent that I had the least amount of holes that I could shoot in his game. But I wasn't terribly excited about the free agent class. This isn't like landing Drew Brees when the San Diego Chargers drafted Phillip Rivers, didn't want Drew Brees anymore, and they just move on from QB to QB. And those lucky suckers, they went and got Justin Herbert now. But nobody ever talks about how they moved from quarterback to quarterback in their succession program, like in a Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers type role. Because you know why? Because they don't have any rings to show for it. But they've been very consistent with having quarterbacks for a while now. And so when Mitch lands on this thing, I didn't want Marcus Mariota. I didn't want Jameis Winston. I was very, very consistent with that. But there are folks who think they still want Joe Hayden re-signed, 33-year-old Joe Hayden, whether he has something to offer to the game, whether he has the ability to make or earn as much money as he previously was. He was like $13-15 million last year. And he's going to want to play significant snaps. He's not going to want to just let that go. Maybe he will. He hasn't signed with any other team, and it's got to make you think things like that. Or some people would still have Troy out there running around.
Yeah, that falls entirely in his court, dude. I know, right? Yeah, people probably still tweet whenever there's a safety injury. Can Troy come back? Like, it was the Heath Miller thing for the past 5 years before we got Freiermuth. Anytime there was an issue at tight end, it was like, but could Heath come back? And that was never a possibility. And I mean, I think you're reasonable with the Mitch critiques. I do. I'm with you on it. I sold myself very fast on Trubisky, and I don't take anything back. I still think he can manage a game. I still think we can win with Mitch. I still think the Steelers offense is in better shape with a Mitch Trubisky than Ben Roethlisberger of last year. I still think all of that is true. I just think that Kenny could do that ×2. To say it as simply as possible, I really think Mitch is a fine quarterback. I don't think he's anything special. I hope he can prove me wrong. I'm all for that. But I really don't think that it should be frowned upon, or you should need to explain yourself to when people ask, like, oh, I thought you wanted Kenny Pickett to start. I did want Kenny Pickett to start, too, and I do want him to start. I don't agree with the call to start Mitch Trubisky. Let me just say that first and foremost. I understand it. I realize it's a smart move and it's a safe move. But if I was calling the plays and I was running the show, I have seen enough from Kenny Pickett when you look at his progression through each practice, when you look at what he did in live game action. He checked every box that you could have presented to him to win the job. Only problem with that is Mitch Trubisky checked every box right back to not lose the job. And whereas that's not enough for me for Mitch to keep the job, it's enough for the Steelers to allow Mitch to keep the job. I'm plenty excited to see what he has to offer. I am infamous for saying I need a quarterback who can move, who's good with his legs, who's athletic. Those are Mitch's strong suits. I'm excited to see him bring that to our offense and utilize it like he did in the preseason in certain instances. Again, though, I just feel like Kenny did all of these things just as well, if not better. So I was ready to start Kenny. The Steelers weren't, but I don't regret anything.
So I'm right there with you, Zach, with the whole Mitchell Trubisky thing. I just put it this way. I was trying to say before, I wasn't the most excited. We were talking about before, we had some thoughts in the Lost episode about how Byron Leftwich, for example, started for 4 years with the Jacksonville Jaguars, went over to Atlanta for a year, and then comes over to the Steelers, but as a backup. And I was always suggesting and we had suggested, and this was the weird thing about this whole process. And I even had something that I had posted late over on the website last week at stillcityunderground.com as whether Kenny Pickett could be the 1, 2, or the 3. And everybody lost their minds. I was like, watch everybody lose their minds when Mason Rudolph's named the backup. And then it happened, which was fabulous, by the way. That was great. And that's what I was going to say, Mark Madden, sometimes, maybe he was right and it made sense. And in a way, that's what the Charlie Day meme was all about. It was about certain folks that were trying to build this bridge of why Kenny Pickett, well, he's the backup, but he's not really the backup. It was
listen. That was the most believable take, was that Mason was the backup in case Mitch got hurt in a game, and then Kenny would be turned over the reins if it was a long-term injury or if it was a changing of position because of poor performance. I fueled that fire because I believe it. I truly believed it because it sounded more reasonable and smarter than my first response, which was that has to be a typo. I thought that was lunacy. I thought my brain was trying to tell me, dude, you're entering denial. This is unhealthy for you. There's no way it's a typo.
It really was denial.
Today it comes out it's a typo.
Yeah, I was fighting people on the tweets, but like I said, it's he's the backup, even though he's not listed as the backup. But it's okay if Mason is listed as a backup. We're being nice to Mason. But Kenny's really the backup. That's only if, in game, they'd rather have Mason come in cold. But that's the thing. Madden was actually arguing that, and that made sense to me. And I'm not upset about it anyway. Look, my horse and my dog in the fight here, my horse in the race, my dog in the fight is the Pittsburgh Steelers overall. I'm just not overwhelmed with Mitch Trubisky as the starter. Will he offer something that Ben didn't? We just pulled some stats, and I know we've talked about you can't be the stats whore or whatever, but it does paint a certain picture.
Stat
50
slut.
starts, stat slut.
Print the shirts.
Yes, print the shirts. But I asked you this as a trivia question off the air, and I was like, how many 3 touchdown pass games did Ben Roethlisberger have last year in a very similar offense? And you had guessed correctly, just 2 out of, well,
Yes,
not
I
quite
nailed it.
17
Make
games.
sure the people know
games.
I nailed it. After I guessed right, I was like, why wasn't that on the show?
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm sure this is in the territory. I mean, there's other quarterbacks that are going to do this more consistently, but it was just to paint a picture of, don't expect Mitch to just come out here and light up the scoreboard. That's not where I'm at. I'm expecting him to be a game manager, and hopefully he limits his mistakes. It's so wild, like all over the board. And there's folks that are like, it's the same thing as the Mason Rudolph deal. Oh, he sucks. Trade him for like a second rounder. Well, wait a minute. Why is he worth the second rounder if he sucks? And then there's people that are like, well, Mason got a chance. Well, wait a minute. Didn't Mitch get a chance already? He's played a lot more games too. It's like, which way does this? It's always he put on the black and gold and all of a sudden you're Superman. I got to see something different. I'm not necessarily rooting against the guy. It's just that some of the expectations for whoever you can grab, name a player that gets released from another team or somebody that's floating around there that hasn't been signed by 32 teams yet, and they're instantly going to be an all-pro because they play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's not necessarily the case. The thing that scares me is this right here. This is the last time Mitch was a starter. 2020 season. And I didn't put record on here because Foles came in at some of these points, and some of this has to deal with defense. I believe record gets skewed because the record only counts if you're the starter, of course. So Mason also has some wins, losses that aren't necessarily attributed to him one way or the other. So that's not fair to necessarily say, but the first 3 games, he actually is 3-0 here, even though Foles comes in, but he has the worst completion percentage, throws for the fewest yards, but has 6 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, got sacked a few times, and then 1 fumble. The middle batch of all of this, 67.3%, 776 yards the most, 7 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, gets sacked 8 times, 4 fumbles. They lose 2 of those 3 games. So even though he's performed better, they still lose. And then in the last part of this, highly accurate, but throws fewer passes than the 113. He only has 98 attempts and 719 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So, 1 for 1. Doesn't get sacked a whole lot, protects the football better with 1 fumble versus 4 fumbles, and they're 2-1. It's just all over the place. It's all over the map. So it's like, you just got to kind of respect that this is the kind of player that you're going to get. I don't think you're going to get high completion percentages with a lot of touchdowns, fewer interceptions, not fumbling, not getting sacked. He's going to run around, play some backyard football, and maybe pile up more stats, this, that, or the other thing. I guess we'll wait and see. The whole point of, and we've talked about this, the cows come home, go back into the archives. We said this on the last episode as well. We talked a lot about the quarterbacks and everything else. I'm with you, bro. I would much rather just, let's throw Kenny Pickett out there and see what he's got. The Steelers obviously didn't think that way, and all of a sudden I thought they were thinking a whole other way. They were thinking like Dennis Dixon, even Big Ben, Landry Jones, Mason Rudolph. This guy is going to be the 3 no matter what. Josh Dobbs, 3 no matter what. You're a rookie, you're the 3. You're not active on game days. And that made kind of sense because wouldn't you want to prepare Kenny a little bit more than just throw him out there? But apparently 24 hours later, that's not the case. Maybe it's they want him to be available in case you get good Mitch or bad Mitch. I couldn't even say it right. Did not mean the slip of the tongue. Seriously, I don't have anything against them. I don't. It's just my level of expectations. We were saying this too. We threw out some names. Brandon Boykin was not one of them, but we may as well have. We threw out J.J. Wilcox. We threw out all kinds of guys that have been part of like trades or acquisitions, and you get super excited about these players being added to the Steelers and just think, oh, they're going to be so much better here. We were just talking about it with, and I already forgot his name again, Jesse Davis, right? Tackle.
Yep.
They just signed that the safety, and I forget from that was with Tampa Bay.
Andrew Adams.
And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. They signed this dude. He's going to be awesome. And it's like, I've just learned over the years to temper my expectations. Like
Morgan Burnett.
Niall Davis,
Ryan Switzer.
Ryan Switzer. Oh man, that's a bad one. That one burns me. I feel personally attacked for Ryan Switzer. I had such higher hopes for Ryan
How do you
Switzer.
think I feel, dude? We're like body type doppelgangers. If you put a helmet and pads on me and put me on the field, I am Ryan Switzer with tattoos, longer hair.
Yeah, and I was saying too, I was like, I wish I could just take a pair of scissors and just go over the top of your head there. Get you a little closer to what I got going on here, man. Yeah, the headphones are just barely fitting on there. See, I don't have the problem with the headphones. I just have a big head. Like I have a monstrous noggin. So I just got to make sure.
Big brain, bro. That's what I tell the chicks. I also have a big head. It's a good thing. You need more space for that mind.
Yes. I have a dirty quote I'm not going to share, but it came from a movie anyway. So I borrowed it from there. It was like, what the heck?
Well, you already called Mitch a bad bitch, so I can't get much worse from here.
Less hair, more head. So not true at all, especially if you're married. So
what I hear.
And I told a whole story about how my wife broke my toe 2 days before Christmas, but I'm not going to get into that one again anyways. And it involved SpongeBob slipper. So if you want to hear that, maybe for the 2%ers at the end of the show. Quarterback agnostic.
Nice tease.
I used the $5 word again. Quarterback agnostic. Still don't know if it's the right word, but I don't care exactly. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of difference because of who's back there between Mitch and Kenny Pickett, and even Mason Rudolph. I'd throw that out there too. I know there's still the haters. So agnostic, by the way, is one who's skeptical about the existence of God, but does not profess true atheism. So I'm skeptical of Mitch Trubisky, even if you were to have one of the other quarterbacks in, or it doesn't matter which one you have in there. That I think the Steelers are on the same path. And I was asking as to whether or not we felt the first 4 games, because we can't go through the whole schedule. And we got some other things to cover too. But the main thing is like, do you feel a lot more comfortable now versus like me and Brian did this exercise like maybe a month or 2 ago, and you saw when the schedule was released, you already knew who the opponents were going to be. You're trying to figure out what players were going to be added to this roster. Like, how do you feel about the Steelers? Because we saw Good Morning Football, and Good Morning Football, I think it was this morning's edition, actually, the Tuesday edition, Kyle Brandt, Peter Schrager, and they had all these hats, all the new era hats, the cream color. I like this though. It's like, it's at least different. Like I have so many black and gold caps. I get something a little different here, but we were thinking about like, where did the Steelers fall? Like the Bengals, they were just in the Super Bowl. They should be favored to win the AFC North. The AFC North is going to be tough, but there's a lot of people who feel Ravens, they were the #1 seed. They had all these injuries. All of a sudden they fell off planet Earth and finished in the basement, which helped them load up on a draft when they're already good at drafting. Then they just got better draft position. Now they have all these young guys coming in, and now they have all their injured players returning. And it's like a lot of people are thinking, even though Schrags actually, he besmirched the Baltimore Ravens as well, didn't have them in the postseason either. He went
I
with
thought
two
he didn't
AFC
have
Wests.
us in there. I didn't look any further than that, because when I saw he skipped us, my eyes became red and I was so angry. So I didn't even look any farther than that. But I did see that Kyle Brandt got us in the playoffs with the wild card. Our man Kyle Brandt always coming through with the Steelers support, and no one else did on the set. But that was enough. I mean, that feels about right. It feels like there's a good 25% of the population that believes the Steelers could still be something this year. And obviously most Steeler fans, not all, but most are in that category too. I felt good about the Steelers. I mean, before the quarterback situation was figured out, but that doesn't mean a whole lot coming from me, because I always think we're going to go like 11-6 or 11-7, sneak our way into the playoffs. That's just what I think every single year. Ideally, we go undefeated, but and, like I try to be different from everybody who's like, 10-6, 10-7. So I go one more and I say 11-6 to be, individualistic and be special and different. So I think that's what I thought before the quarterback situation was figured out. I thought that we could be a playoff contending team. I don't know about a Super Bowl contending team, but I think making it to the playoffs and possibly winning a game is plausible. And I think the simplest way to do this is just to break down the roster, not go in depth of position, but just look at quarterback. Okay. Quarterback, I would say whether it's Mitch or Kenny, I feel good about that decision. I feel like either guy can play winning football for us. do what I personally want them to do with an offense and use their legs when trouble comes. Be accurate, be decisive, be a good enough quarterback so that the defense doesn't feel like they have to win every single game. I think both guys can do that. I think Mason can do like 2 out of 5 of those bullet points. I think he can manage the game. I think he can do enough at times where the defense doesn't feel too much pressure. So moving on, running back. Awesome. We're great. We got a top 5 running back.
Wait. You don't get to move on from quarterback yet.
No, I'm moving on. I'm going through every position. I'm trying to get right through this to answer your question about how I feel about the Steelers. So next, thank you.
No. You can't move on from quarterback. That's the only thing this show's about. By the way, agnostic, one who is doubtful or non-committal about something. That's like the 3rd definition. So that actually works out pretty well to what I was trying to say. But, yeah, go ahead, man. I mean, we were going to go through all the positions anyways, but now we got to come all the way back around after we cover all 12 groups and say, well, do you think they could beat the Bengals? Do you think they could beat the Patriots and stuff like that? So, but we'll get there. I'm busting chops, man.
It's an hour-long show. People got time. You know, I'm here after my work day. They can sit through a show for me and listen to me break down my roster prediction, okay? So running back, I have great. As simple as that. We got a top 5 running back. No need to explain anything further. And
wait a minute. This is what happens when Zach's mic doesn't pick up for a show. He's got to make sure he gets it all in now. Go ahead, brother.
Thanks. Yeah, about time. So offensive line, suspect, not great. So that is the one that I have written in red. Offensive line. I know it's a big issue. It's one issue. Moving on. Tight end, great. Potential top 5 guy. I really think Freiermuth, I'm going out of my way to draft him in every league that I can. I really think if you can't get one of those elite tight ends in fantasy, Freiermuth is your next best bet to be a great tight end this year. I really think it's possible. Defensive line, awesome. Linebackers, Miles Jack is great. The rest, not great, but Miles Jack is a huge upgrade from last year. Outside edge rushers, obviously incredible. Don't need to say anything more. TJ Watt, I did say something more, but I felt like if you weren't following, there you go. Plus the addition of Malik Reed. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, let's talk about that. You like that addition? No.
Cornerback, solid. I'm not worried about it. I think it's good enough to get by, which is reminiscent of Steelers like Super Bowl defenses of recent. You know, Ike Taylor, Deshae Townsend, Brian McFadden. No offense to them. They're great. Like in my eyes, they're solid cornerbacks. Nothing special. No Pro Bowls. I mean, maybe 1 or 2, but the corners are good enough. Safeties, awesome. Minkah Fitzpatrick, elite. Terrell Edmonds, better than he deserves credit for, or better than he gets credit for. Freudian slip, not. Next, specialists, Boswell, incredible. Top 2, top 3. Kuntz, Ginzer from Duquesne, love it. Great long snapper. And I think Harvin, I mean, he was a rookie last year. He had some good, some bad. So all in all, I really said one spot, and that's the offensive line that I'm like, definitely not great. So, I mean, like, sue us for thinking the Steelers can be a good team this year and be a double-digit winning team and make it to the playoffs. I really don't think it's homerish at all when you break it down as simple as that, despite the numerous interruptions from you.
Dude, wow. Dude, gotta leave something on the bone, man. All right, everyone, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time. It's like, it's not the 2%ers, it's like the 50%ers now because the show just got cut in half. But no. The only reason I was saying like the first quarter of the show, and man, I really wish there was like a lot of great stuff we had, and just talking about technical issues and whatnot, and all the people that have probably PO'd you on Twitter as well just kind of fired you up a little bit more for today. But we lost some of that stuff.
I had a couple too many last night. I had to delete some tweets this morning, which I'm team no delete, so it takes a lot for me to do that. But yeah, I was cussing a lot, and I'm sick of being made out to be a Mitch hater. Like, I didn't think this was going to happen. I always thought this was a possibility. Look at my shirt.
Yeah.
It was my idea to make this shirt. I gave this idea to the guy. I thought it was always a possibility that Trubisky would start. I just wanted it to be Kenny because of what Kenny showed, not for my own selfish reasons or because I wanted to see the new flashy toy or because I'm a millennial. Dude, it's because Kenny Pickett did what was asked of him to win the job. So if you disagree with that, I have nothing for you. But I don't hate Mitch, and I don't think that I don't think it's a bad idea that he's starting, but I would just go with Kenny.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was trying to actually pull up and see. I think I've got Mike Tomlin's actual quote from the presser today too, that pretty much said much to the same thing. Of course, there's a whole lot of his opening. Kenny will take practice reps as a backup, and that was an interesting thing too, because as QB3, he'd be running the scout team, and friend of mine, Jim Wexel, I'll say at least, jumps into my mentions, and then he goes, well, actually, the QB3 would be getting more reps than a QB2. And then they flipped the depth chart, and I said, oh, well, hey, Jim, now what? It's like,
I know, yeah,
well,
Wex
Mason's
is awesome.
going to do that now.
He tries to weather the storm, and he doesn't know, like, how many bullets are coming his way at once with all these comments and stuff. But, I know, man, the hysteria between last night and this morning. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but this is why I wasn't freaking out. You didn't really see a reaction out of me from Kenny being QB3, because I thought there was an explanation behind it. I was wrong on my guess, but it was the simpler guess that I thought sounded stupid, and that was that there was just a misprint. But I wasn't freaking out when I saw that Kenny Pickett was QB3 last night.
Yeah. I mean, why would you freak out? Like, the guy sits under the learning tree one way or another. We pretty much
what
all
can you
thought.
Do?
We still thought, we just thought that maybe it was gamesmanship, or maybe they were uncertain as to whether they wanted Mitchell Trubisky as number one. Who could say? You know what? We're not in those positions. We're not behind those closed doors to know. Mike Tomlin said, here was the question that was asked of him, and at the noon press conference, and you have to catch up on it because live they had some issues streaming it. But there was a depth chart. It was released yesterday. It had Mason as the number 2. Today it's Kenny. What was behind the discrepancy? It was a clerical error. That's how the depth chart was listed at the start of training camp. The cut and paste component was the cut and paste component, if there could ever be a Tomlinism. I know you were hoping for a little bit more colorful explanation, but it is what it is. That's what happened. So
I saw someone mention McFarland was on the depth chart, and I didn't see him, but someone mentioned that in the comments and was like, "That's old. McFarland is on there," and I maybe I just missed him, or I forgot to check, but I'm pretty sure I didn't see him. So whoever commented that and saw McFarland on there, they had an early beat on the situation. If it really was the old depth chart, because I looked at it too, and it looked pretty normal for the most part. But if McFarland was on there, that proves that it was obsolete.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not going to take the time to even dig that out. And
no, there's no point. We all know what's going on now.
Yeah. And again, the Steelers could be in a far worse position. They've got a guy of the future. They got somebody they could rely on with Mason Rudolph as well, if Mitchell Trubisky were really, truly that awful or terrible, which I still don't believe they would be. I'm just not expecting all pro numbers, even Pro Bowl type numbers. I'm not expecting him to go out there and sling it around like Matthew Stafford or prime Ben Roethlisberger. That's the only thing I'm trying to get out of this. We've always said that he would be the QB. We said that he was expected to be the quarterback one. That was at least the expectation. We didn't necessarily say 100% galvanized and whatever, that it is a guarantee that he'd be QB1. There are people who wanted to bet on it, which I know you do a lot of sports betting, and maybe you had some money in on that. But myself, I'm not going to take that bet because I think that's a stupid bet. Why would I bet on something like that? I don't care that much to be
those are
right
the best
or
bets,
wrong.
Dude. The stupid ones are the ones that hit.
Right or wrong. How many times do you cry in your Cheerios over the Pirates? I see you put some money on them every now and then, and that's got to be rough.
Good news is they're always underdogs, so the money line is in their favor. So I can just put $5 down with the possibility to win, let's just say 20, 25. So it stings a lot less when they lose those games. When they win them, it's a great feeling. But honestly, primarily with the Pirates, I kind of just take the home run props because those are more fun to try and figure those out. But with the Pirates in general and trying to root for them, yeah, it's a struggle. I won't even front and say I'm a Pirates fan. I'm not, truthfully. I support the players on the team, if you want to say that. And I like putting money on them because it makes the games somewhat interesting. But yeah, they lose way more often than they win, and that's not an exaggeration. Just look at their record.
Yeah. As
far as football goes, though, I get pretty lucky sometimes. Sometimes a blind squirrel finds a nut, and Florida State was that nut for me over the weekend.
Wow, what a game.
Wyoming was too. So I ended up about even after my weekend of college football, thanks to Florida State and Wyoming, the most obscure couple you'll ever hear. You won't really hear those two names said often together, but shout out Florida State and Wyoming.
Well, yeah, and we just went through the whole college football scenarios. So I got one more Tomlinism to lift from his press conference, maybe some more, but this was another one that stood out because somebody had to ask the dumb question. And it was, what did you see from Kevin Dotson to have him win that job at left guard? And the answer was he played better than KG, and it's as simple as that. It's like,
oh man, he said he was the shiniest turd in the toilet. I can't believe that's how he described that. That's such a demeaning way to give Dotson the job, and like it's funny. That's an all-time moment from Tomlin. But come on, man, give your left guard a little bit of juice. He was better than the shittiest lineman we have. That's why he started.
That's just, I know. I felt bad for that entire comment there, and then. You just got to hope. We were talking about how these teams are going to match up. Like initially, I say going into Cincinnati, I'm so worried about the offensive line. Of course, you were already saying that. Of course, showing a picture of the defensive line there instead. But you get the point. It's somebody at a point of attack. Here we go.
That's why you come to the Steel City Underground. You never know what's going to come your way.
You never know what's going to happen. There's T.J. Watt. You got to get T.J. Watt in there. And while we're talking about it, why don't we do a lightning bolt flash as well? Why not? You know what? We're already so far off of this because the toughest part.
Lightning. I love it. That's the best kind. I don't really have any tidbits to talk about, but let's go. Let's shoot the shit. What can I tell you? Lightning round. What do you want to know?
Well, no, I'm going to go back to these first 4 games. And what originally I was thinking it could be like a 2-2 situation, 1-3, September football, extension of the preseason, slow starts with Mike Tomlin teams, new quarterback, new situation, no matter who that quarterback was.
2-2 or 1-3, they can start Kenny Pickett at that point.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I'll go even faster than that. That Thursday night game, that's going to be in Cleveland. If something falters there, they got a mini bye. They'll get a few extra days where they could work and just immediately slide on over. And we were talking about the Baltimore Ravens a few years ago when they drafted Lamar Jackson. They had Joe Flacco as the starter. They would put Lamar Jackson in for like maybe some gimmick plays or some gadget plays and get some reps. And at a certain point there, they had lost a handful of games. I think 3 in a row, went into a bye, and they said, screw it. Going right to Lamar right now. And they actually were like 5-3 or something like that. And then they coasted into the playoffs. They won like almost all of those games and then lost like a real close one to Kansas City, maybe even an overtime, I believe. When Kansas City was close. Kansas City.
I remember that game, not terribly well. Was that when they had Darrelle Revis, right? The Chiefs?
Yeah, I think so. I believe so.
Yeah, that was so random. I think that sticks out in my brain. I think he had a play on the goal line, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I remember that rookie Lamar. They figured him out fast, dude. I mean, or wasn't that the Chargers, or that was it the next year? Because I know the Chargers gave him a hard time in the playoffs because they put all those DBs in.
Yeah. The Lamar Jackson saga there, though, begins. We're just talking about when might you see Kenny Pickett, because a lot of people are thinking Mitch is just keeping the seat warm. That was the other thought of maybe him being a quarterback 3 was, okay, he's not directly over your shoulder, and it just gets a little bit of pressure off of your starting quarterback, maybe. I mean, it's just going to be people. I said this.
Yeah, point.
I feel bad for Mason. It's just like he just seems to get jerked around and doesn't have the respect of the fans. But I'm going to feel even worse the first time. Week 2, New England Patriots, and let's say Mitch Trubisky makes a mistake. People are going to be all over this guy just because he's not Kenny Pickett. And that's the same thing when they were booing Mason in the first preseason game. It just wasn't fair to Mason. It's not fair to anybody. And what happens if Kenny doesn't end up being the guy? Then it's going to be because he wasn't Ben Roethlisberger. Fill in Ben Roethlisberger's shoes. This is going to be a long, hard roller coaster ride if it doesn't just shake out and give you the thrills that you want right away. So, and it's coming fast. It's coming Sunday. We finally have football. It's right around the corner. So,
Bengals, life has meaning.
Yeah. The Bengals, as if it didn't have meaning before that. But hey, folks, thanks for sticking with us all through the offseason. It's been gangbusters. I got to say thank you at least. And more subscribers and this and that. Now we're shooting for the moon now. So hang in there. If you haven't, leave us a rating or follow us wherever you may be listening or watching from. That Baltimore Ravens team.
Donations, Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, whatever. Just send a if you have any comments.
Right. If you're a sugar daddy, by all means, we need.
We love sugar
we
daddies.
Like benefactors.
Sugar mamas too. Comment, like, subscribe. Okay.
Yeah, Baltimore lost 3 in a row. That Chiefs game was the only one they lost of the 7. They won 6 out of 7 games after moving over to Lamar Jackson, made that big move. And I even would say that John Harbaugh may have been on the hot seat at that point and might have felt a little more pressure than Mike Tomlin might to have to.
Oh, he was. I've gone on rants before saying Harbaugh gets a pass all the time. He missed the playoffs 3 years in a row. And if that would have happened to Tomlin, there would have been groups outside of his house. I won't say, like, dude, you know what I'm going with that. There will be angry people outside of his house because people are terrible in Pittsburgh, not all over the place, but they'd be calling for his head, dude.
New York, Philly, Pittsburgh. Yeah. Oh no, I'm 100% all the way there with you, and I wanted to actually look that up to believe it or not. I think it was. You're right. 3 seasons in a row where I was thinking.
Right, because I've tweeted about it and I checked my facts, and I wouldn't just tweet about it for no reason. But Tomlin may have matched that because
that's what I was looking up. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he did, and that's where a lot of people are. No, it was just the two, 2018, 2019. Going back to 2017 was that bad Jaguars loss. So where they were, man, it's hard to believe that wasn't even that long ago. 13-3, where Miles Jack originally came and played his first game at what was once called Heinz Field. So. But I'm looking at, like, on the road against the Bengals. Do you want to put the rookie in that situation? How do I feel about that whole matchup? Bengals, I think, might be rusty, even though they're returning the same team. They didn't play much of these guys, if any of them, in the preseason. There's a lot of you saw the Steelers go into Buffalo as underdogs on the road for week 1 last year. And Buffalo was supposed to be the big Super Bowl contender as well. So they've put David against Goliath more than one occasion here, and the Steelers have risen to that occasion. And I think they could probably do it again, but it's not like my highest expectation is that they're going to come out as a well-oiled machine, a much better offense, Mitch slinging around, throwing 3-4 touchdowns or something like that. You just got to hope that you limit Joe Burrow and that offensive line can hold back guys like Trey Hendrickson, for example, Sam Hubbard, guys of that nature. We talked about the home game. I feel a lot better, even though it's Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick isn't against a rookie quarterback. And you've got Mac Jones, and you've got a Patriots team that's kind of a shell of what it used to be. Bill Belichick is about where you put the respect on the name of the Patriots. Otherwise, like, even with the Steelers, I understand that they were a playoff team as well, and they got the doors blown off of them too in that wild card round last year. Do they have the cornerstone pieces like the Steelers have of a TJ Watt, a Minka Fitzpatrick, the guys you were naming, Najee Harris, for example, who could rise up and be a dude, Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson? I don't see the same type of level of play there. And what used to, like, make you kind of like squirm in your seat and think Tom Brady's coming to town, Tom Brady ain't there anymore. This is Mac Jones. And I think this is something where I'm not as concerned with this. And obviously Deshaun Watson being suspended, even the short week, it's a short trip. It's up to Cleveland. It's AFC North football. But at this point, you've already played one AFC North football game. You've played maybe a tough game with the Patriots, but you had them at home. You're going to go up to Cleveland. And I'm not going to say they're necessarily going to be favored, depending on what the record is, 1-1. Imagine being 2-0 and then going 3-0 after Cleveland. People will lose they will lose their minds. And particularly with Mitch Trubisky, you'll have everybody in your mentions there, Zach, telling you how you were wrong, you hater, even with the Trubisky chains shirt. But
wouldn't be the first time.
And then the Jets. And do you have Zach Wilson back there? Talking about putting him on the field week 1, which I think is that's a little sketchy. You know what I mean? But if
they're trying to keep their opponents guessing with that one, there's about 0% chance Zach Wilson suits up week 1. If he does, they're setting him up to get hurt real bad.
Yeah. That's the same thing I was kind of thinking with the Pickett Trubisky thing. I'm like, is this gamesmanship? Don't want to let the Bengals have like 2 weeks to prepare for one specific guy. Now they know who the guy is. I mean, they're going to prepare either way, but they still maybe had to put something into their game plan and think, well, if it's Kenny Pickett and he has these tendencies, or what does he do well versus what Mitch Trubisky does well, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of had that feeling too, but you kind of think with the Jets, Jets had a hell of a draft. Their team on paper should be better. Do they gel? Or are they going to be a better team? Are they going to be competitive? I'm feeling a lot better about that first quarter of the season than I did a little while ago, where I even thought it could be 1-3, depending on who's playing there. Of course, and you mentioned it, offensive line, because we're not worried about Najee Harris. Jaylen Warren, also listed as the number 2, by the way. Tomlin just went out of his way to say something about his special teams play. So you got to imagine that he's the first man up. We'll see if he gets a couple of touches or not, because we know that Mike Tomlin likes the bell cow. He hasn't had a non-bell cow since Jaylen Warren's cousin, Fast Willie Parker, was playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers with Mewelde Moore. Maybe he does it again just for nostalgia. I don't know. I just hope he kind of limits the touches, kind of preserves Najee just a little bit. A good run game.
Jaylen Warren could be the new Mewelde Moore. That would be sick, dude.
Yeah.
They kind of match up skill-wise. I mean, I don't know how well Jaylen Warren touches the ball, but Kenny Pickett's first touchdown was a pass to Warren for a touchdown. So
yeah,
Warren has decent hands, and that was a big part of Mewelde's game. That'd be a really fortunate aligning of the stars if Jaylen Warren could be like a Mewelde Moore for us, if not better. That would be awesome.
That would be pretty darn cool, just to even have them in the same breath. I don't want to put too many expectations on the young man or anybody thinking about
I'm a big
Mewelde
Moore fan. He's the top 5 Steeler running back all time, so you don't want to put that on Jaylen Warren.
Top 5? Top 5.
Absolutely.
Franco's going into getting his jersey retired too. And then I heard a little birdie also mention that they're going to wear the block number throwbacks with the special patch on that Christmas Eve recreation of the Immaculate Conception anniversary, 50th anniversary against
the reception.
What did I say? Immaculate.
You said the Jesus one.
Oh, Immaculate Conception, Immaculate Reception. Then there's the Immaculate Extension. You know what? I slip the tongue all the time on all 3 of those. The Antonio Brown one was still nuts. To this day,
I was there.
The Ravens.
I've said that many times on this show. I about teared up, man. It was one of the best moments of my life.
It was the only one because of Christmas that I had to give up my tickets for. I couldn't do it. And I watched it at home with bated breath, and I was just like, oh man, they did it. It was just so amazing. Not to mention,
I don't have any kids, or commitments really, so that's why I was able to go to that.
Yeah, I know. It sucks getting older, bro. But anyways, I feel good about the first 4 games. I think the Steelers match up very well with a lot of these teams. We still think the offensive line is maybe the most suspect. We'll see. Dan Moore, we were mentioning. We talked in the back rooms. We talked about this in the last episode, which I'll keep referencing because it had so many good ideas. Left guard. He played with 5 different left guards last year, including Joe Haig, who's now joins Jesse James with the Cleveland Browns, is whatever they're going to do there. I don't know what the Steelers never really saw in Haig, but he's a tackle. He wasn't supposed to be playing guard to begin with. John LeGlue was out there. J.C. Hassenauer was out there, and that's aside from Kevin Dotson, who was the starter. And there's a lot to be said about Dan Moore playing with just this plethora of different dudes next to him, including even Kendrick Green and Kevin Dotson in these preseason games. And you can't get your offensive linemen to gel. You can't get them to all work together as a unit. You were saying before, you got to trust the guy that's next to you, et cetera, et cetera. So you're hoping you have higher hopes and hope that he's just not completely like a bum, you know what I mean? But then again, he's still a 4th round pick, and that drives me crazy too. Is like the folks that are talking about, when you're talking about cornerstones on the team and going with needs versus best player available, they still needed a running back. And you got Najee Harris, who's now a captain. You got Pat Freiermuth, the tight end. They weren't going to find another tight end like Pat Freiermuth in either of these 2 drafts anywhere else in the draft, in my opinion.
That's my biggest takeaway, dude. When people love to bitch on Twitter or on the radio wave, wherever their platform is, and they're like, oh, I sure looks like the Steelers should have invested in that offensive line, or wow, right about now, I really wish the Steelers would have done more for the offensive line. Okay, dude, if you're going to say shit like that, give me a follow-up. Are you going to sacrifice Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, Najee Harris, or Pat Freiermuth? I think it's pretty unanimous. All 4 of those picks are well perceived right now, and most Steeler fans want them to be here. So you can argue about the free agency thing, I suppose, but James Daniels was a top 3 free agent guard this year. So he, regardless of how he's played so far, they made the necessary move within their means to try and improve the offensive line. So I just hate that. And I really push against that when people are like, oh, it sure looks like the Steelers should have done more. Dude, they got 2 new starting offensive linemen this year. Okay, one's been decent, the other's been bad. The rest, they invested draft capital in, and they couldn't sacrifice their 1st-round pick this year or last year or their 2nd-round pick for a lineman. And honestly, if they would have reached on a guy who hasn't been that good yet, outside outside of Creed Humphrey. That is the one exception.
Yeah.
If you're like, I would trade Pat Freiermuth for Creed Humphrey, well, then I have nothing more to say. You beat me on that. That's a fair thing to say. However, it is very hard to find a tight end that has elite traits. How long has it been since Heath Miller? A very long time. People take the tight end position for granted, just like they do safety. But when you have an elite playmaker at that spot, it's a game breaker. So I hate that. I hate that people bring that up and they're like, oh, they should have done more with the offensive line. They can't do everything, man. It's not feasible or realistic.
No, not at all. And we talked about the other names that ended up getting thrown around. Like if you're forsaking one of those guys like a Kenny Pickett or Najee Harris, or you getting Alex Leatherwood, who like flamed. Have you ever heard of a first round pick, like pick 15, like completely not on the same roster a year later? Tevin Jenkins
was arrested.
Yeah, Tevin Jenkins, who went to the Bears and hasn't really done anything. I mean, you just look around at some of the other players that were available, and same thing with free agency. Chuks Okorafor was still like one of the top tackles that was available. They just happened to re-sign their own guy. He was getting that kind of contract no matter where he ended up, and he decided team-friendly deal for this first year and being brought back. It doesn't mean necessarily that, again, it's not that he's like the savior of whatever. And Mason Cole, we've had nothing to say about him. At least he's not snapping the ball over anyone's head. That got like Nate Gillum and whoever the other center was that was in camp, like cut almost immediately. It was almost all Mason Cole and JC Hassenauer throughout all of those practices and training camp sessions. So I feel better about that. We'll see if Kevin Dotson rises to the occasion. They got Jesse Davis, who's kind of like a little bit of an insurance policy. We breezed right through the defensive line, but you know, last year, no Tyson Alualu, no Stephon Tuitt. You found out maybe the Davis brothers weren't going to cut it, or Isaiah Buggs wasn't going to cut it, or Henry Mondo, who's no longer with this team. He got released and picked up by the Giants. I mean, you've got Cam Hayward, you've got Alualu back. You signed Larry Ogunjobi, you drafted DeMarvin Leal, you got Isaiah Loudermilk, and with all of that, we've already forgotten about Chris Wormley, who was the guy who started in place there, and he had like 7 sacks in the season, and he wasn't like a total liability. You just hope Devin Bush could pick it up, and if not, you've got all of these other safeties that are kind of like hybrid safeties that are playing out there. You got 3 corners that can go in all of these type of rotations. So when they have like these depth chart things that say or whatever be the case, it's because Cam Sutton's going to be playing all over the freaking place.
I know everybody freaked out when they saw the depth chart and was like, oh, Cam Sutton's the outside corner with Levi Wallace. Don't they know that he's not that good at that? First of all, I don't know where that's coming from. Cam's not really a bad outside corner. But number 2, as soon as they go to a 3-receiver set or more, Sutton's going to bump in and Witherspoon comes on. You do realize that, you at home who's complaining about Witherspoon not being the starter. He is the starter. It just takes 3 corners being out there, which in today's NFL happens
do that
all
a lot
of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And Minka, maybe it helps Minka freelance a little bit. It sucks DeMonte Casey ends up starting the season on injured reserve, and hopefully he'll be able to come back with that injury he had in the preseason. But again, the guy they just signed was at Adams. And part of our thing that we were worried about was maybe safety depth, maybe corner depth. They just signed, is it Justin Jackson? Do I have it right? Is it the right Justin Jackson, the former 2nd round pick of the
Josh Jackson?
Josh Jackson, that's right. I knew it wasn't Justin. Justin's the guy who got like $50 million or $60 million in the offseason. But again, and you were mentioning this, it was pretty much 2 sides of the same coin with Justin Lane. But you're still kind of excited, like if you were looking back on it and you're like, oh, I got Jackson. It's kind of the same thing with Justin Gilbert. You were kind of hoping maybe he turns the leaf and maybe a change of scenery ends up helping some things. And that's where you got to go to the other depth. Derek Tuska.
Oh, yeah, this is from the deleted tapes. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
It was.
The
and Derek
tapes.
Tuska as well.
I said I want to temper my expectations on Josh Jackson because let's be real, he's a bust right now. He hasn't worked out. He's not very good. And in the past, we've brought guys in like this, like Justin Gilbert, and I've gotten really excited about their potential and what they could possibly still become, and it hasn't worked out. And I've been so conditioned and seasoned by these guys that I have this, wall up that I'm not really ready to be excited about the Josh Jackson addition, especially because he's on the practice squad. But I will say this, and I said this on the deleted tapes, that even though I've seen so many of these scenarios not work, the rise of a player last year in Rasul Douglas, who
Yeah.
ironically is on the Packers right now, which is the team that drafted Josh Jackson. Rasul Douglas was like a high draft pick out of West Virginia, cornerback for the Eagles. Really didn't work out. They thrusted him out there early, kind of like Artie Burns, not a first round pick, but he was a high pick, I think second or third.
Third.
And then he bounced around third, then he bounced around a team or two, and now he's landed here, and then he landed in Green Bay.
Yeah.
And on their practice squad, and not even a blip on anyone's radar. It was just a run-of-the-mill Ian Rappaport tweet, like, oh, Rasul Douglas was picked up on the practice squad by the Packers. It was 2 weeks later, this guy was making interceptions, breaking up passes. You mentioned on the deleted tapes that you told me that he had 13 or 15 pass breakups last year, and he had numerous interceptions. Like, he finally blossomed into what he could be because he finally got it and landed in a scheme that worked for him and wasn't thrust out onto the field. He was brought along slowly, and he didn't hold his hand necessarily. The Packers didn't hold Rasul Douglas' hand necessarily, but they allowed him to kind of go at his own pace. And, all right, dude, this is it. If it works, it works. If not, we'll cut you. And he ended up getting broken off this past season, and they made him like a priority to bring back. And that is the shining example and the silver lining that Josh Jackson can cling to, that there's a chance he just fizzles out and we don't see him in like 2 weeks. But there's also a chance that he works out. And I think that Rasul Douglas is a poster child for guys like Josh Jackson right now, where it hasn't worked yet, dude, but you're still young. You still got the intangibles. You still got the desirable makeup of a good cornerback. You just got to put it together. So I think it's a good signing. Low risk, high reward.
Yeah. You need somebody other than James Pierre. We kind of knew who Justin Lane already was, and you're just thinking, did somebody get this wrong? Did somebody evaluate this wrong? Let's get our own look. Let's get a closer look. Rasul Douglas, Packers were his fourth team last year.
Last year.
Yeah, just last year. Raiders, Texans, Cardinals, and then the Packers between offseason and practice squads.
That's what I mean, dude.
That's unbelievable. And it's rare. It's rare. Yeah, exactly. Extreme and outlier, but it still gives you some hope. And then, of course, talking about lowering or downplaying some expectations, but you got to go with Malik Reed as well, because like I was about to say, you were saying the lost tapes. And yes, we were talking about that too, because this time last week, we were talking about how Derek Tuska made the roster. And do the Steelers have enough in the coffers when it comes to any kind of edge rush support? Alex Highsmith, according to Tomlin in his presser, he's going to be available to play on Sunday. That certainly helps. Reed is a veteran player. The Denver Broncos just had like a logjam of people that were in that position, and it's somebody that they would, they kind of aided him in finding his way to the Steelers too, what it sounds like with his agent and with the player himself. They did him a solid. But at the same time, Delonte Scott's back in this whole deal, and who's one of our other camp phenoms? I'm trying to think. It wasn't
Jameer Jones is back.
Jameer Jones, that's who it was.
He's back.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but we'll see.
As the four, I like it. He's not going to play a terrible high amount of snaps, and I'm fine with him coming back, especially because if people remember, Jameer Jones last year, he was one of the camp phenoms, undrafted free agent out of Notre Dame, or maybe it was his second year in the NFL. Regardless, he ended up sticking with the team initially on the 53-man roster for the Steelers, and they relinquished and cut Quincy Roche, who a lot of people viewed as a big steal out of Miami, and the Giants picked him up real fast. And this past preseason, he was kind of the apple of Steeler fans' eyes as far as a guy who might get cut and we could bring back. I don't even know if Roche got cut or not from the Giants, but Jameer Jones got cut from the Jaguars, and we brought him back. So granted, we didn't get Quincy Roche, but we got the guy who kicked him out of town. And as the edge rusher 4, I'm okay with his high ceiling, and I mean, lack of production, sure, but again, we're talking about the fourth guy, and the points about the defense, this all ties into how the people on TV and people who want to think the Steelers aren't going to be good this year, they focus on none of the positives, none of the, they improved in virtually every area besides offensive line where they may have stayed the same. And defense, the run defense was so bad last year that I think it has really made people think that we're just stuck in this continuous, never-ending cycle right now with a struggling defense. Man, the upgrades of Larry Ogunjobi, Miles Jack have already been seen tenfold in the preseason, and those dudes are your starters. Like, they are not rotational pieces. Sure, Ogunjobi's going to get taken out for reps every so often, but those two are going to be high 70% and up snap contributors. So those are two improvements right there off the bat. Going from not having Stephon Tuitt at all, having the ghost of Stephon Tuitt and a hurt Tyson Alualu, to having Larry Ogunjobi and Tyson Alualu and Miles Jack behind him. And when they brought Malik Reed in, I thought I was already sold on the defense.
Yeah.
I already thought it was leaps and bounds better, but getting an actual established edge rusher 3 who's going to play a lot because TJ Watt likes his rest, because he deserves it, and because Alex Highsmith, let's face it, hasn't been healthy at all yet. And I'm a Highsmith fan, but if you can get a little more oomph from that side, slash a guy who's going to be able to contribute, not only backing up Highsmith, but also TJ, that's incredible. This guy had 13 sacks in the past 2 seasons, led the Broncos in sacks last year. He is a true blue football player. And if you've heard his interviews, I'm talking Malik Reed here, he answers everything right, man. Yes, he did have a say on his trade. You mentioned that. He wanted to come to Pittsburgh because of the scheme and because of the history and because of the greatness of the Steelers. And I love that, saying all the right things. Like, sure, Melvin Ingram was able to do some interviews last year and say some things that got you excited, but this guy seems so much more genuine. He seems like he knew what he was stepping into. He seems like he doesn't expect to be given the starting role. I think he's going to be a rotational player. He'll play a lot because, like I said, TJ likes his rest, and Highsmith, who knows how hurt or not hurt he is. But this guy just, he has a Steeler makeup about him. So that's 3 huge additions on the defense that are going to all see significant time. And we were in the playoffs last year. Like, I think we're going to be better.
Yeah, there you go. That's what we're trying to say all along. Contenders or pretenders? Does the quarterback position just get upgraded by default of having somebody who could kind of move around? I don't know how overstated that might be. Some people just think that Mitch is going to be running for his life. Can he draw some plays in the dirt or in the sand or whatever and get some things done? We've seen it. I mean, in the preseason, it's possible. It's certainly possible. And we know he's athletic enough, and we're going to have bootlegs. We're seeing quarterbacks under center where Ben's just like, nah, I've been around 18 years. I ain't doing that, bro. So, I mean, remember when they asked, and Ben threw Todd Haley under the bus big time with it. Why didn't you guys run a quarterback sneak? We don't have it in the playbook. Like, do you think some of that is just protecting Ben too? Sometimes it was just, that was kind of salty, some sour grapes.
Absolutely. It's a house of cards, dude.
Yeah.
There's so much politics that goes into how these guys answer interviews and what they say. Are you kidding me? It was clear on TV when Todd Haley was like, shut the f up, man. You could make out his whole sentence. And Todd Haley came out and said, I wasn't talking to Ben. I was talking to someone else. Come on, dude.
Yeah,
and then he was gone.
He
was gone. He was up in the box.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You were arguing with Ben, dude.
That's just so funny. Like, I remember that, and there was like a whole talk about, well, we're just trying to change the perspective and help the offense now, and it was like, Ben's the king. What Ben says, the only guy like he can't get over on there was Tomlin. And I think it's just because like Ben had only been around like a handful of years prior to Mike Tomlin's arrival. So
I think so too. They kind of came up together for the most part.
Couldn't trump him. But if it was like, you know, if Tomlin left like 3 years ago and they had a different head coach, man, he would have just ragdolled him around wherever he wanted, however he wanted, and pretty much got his way. And who's to say he shouldn't? I mean, you look at, you talk about Aaron Rodgers. He's like dictating, he's the tail wagging the dog in Green Bay. Absolutely. And Russell Wilson got his way and got out of Seattle and then just got a new, like, huge extension with the Denver Broncos. And speaking of answering interviews the right way, Mark Andrews had said something this morning too. They were asking about Lamar Jackson's contract and they're like, well, we just don't let that affect the team and we're just going about our business or whatever, you know, kind of BS reason he gave for it. But overall, you said it, and it's like there's no reason to believe they shouldn't at least contend for a playoff spot. I'm not calling them Super Bowl hopefuls or anything like that, but you never know. Once you get in, you got to get your foot in the door there. But Peter Schrager had his 3 wild card teams. If you think the Steelers aren't going to leapfrog the Bengals or Ravens to be the favorite in this division, let's just say that. We'll just say, let's say it's a wild card. I don't know that I feel as confident about the Miami Dolphins. I definitely don't feel so confident about the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that's the most volatile type of mix or cocktail that you got there, especially sleeping on the Chargers, maybe in that same division. And they also threw the Broncos out there, and it's like, okay, quarterback-driven league, Russell Wilson, you got to hope that defense is still good or a certain tier of great, because there were just some major struggles. And Russell Wilson's my favorite non-Steeler. He has been. I might have to change that now he's in the AFC, but I love Russell Wilson. If he would have been a Steeler, I would have been doing cartwheels. I know I'm not quite doing cartwheels the other way around, but I would be very happy about it. But we got to see, they've had a lot of underachieving wide receivers and players like that. They got rid of Noah Fant. So you got some things there. Javonte Williams, who I like just as much as Najee Harris, too, coming out of the draft process. So when you shake all of that out, could the Steelers take one of those spots? I think they could. And it depends, where do you have the Tennessee Titans and all this stuff? Who's winning divisions? Buffalo Bills? Are the Patriots? Are they still going to be so-so? The Dolphins, I mean, I don't know. I think the Steelers could still be in that mix. You have 7 playoff teams. And
you know what I'm hearing, dude? I'm hearing a lot of first-year, second-year, third-year head coaches. And Tomlin, I think, matched up favorably to those characters.
Yes, thank you. That was going to be the next thing I was going to say, and I was going to say for at least a playoff spot. I know people get tired of hearing he's never had a losing season. He's not fixing to have one again this year either. And you saw what he was able to do, dragging around like old dudes on the offensive line, and Duck Hodges, champion Duck Caller, their great Cinderella story, but an FCS guy from Samford, not Stanford, not the one with the tree on the helmet or whatever, not in their logo.
The treeless, no trees.
No trees. Samford.
Very anti-green down there.
Completely different time zone. We're talking about the deep South versus, the West Coast and everything like that. And it's just, that's where I'm at with this. I do think that people are sleeping on Charlie Weiss in his show that he has on usually, I don't know, it comes on at like 10 a.m. or something like that on Sirius XM every day. And that was yesterday, and they were going division by division, real rapid fire, like very, very, very reminiscent to the lightning round. And just to throw it out there, I'm stealing your thunder. I'm stealing your thunder. Charlie Weiss had said the Browns last year, I had them winning this division. I had them as my 1, and now I have them as my 4. Whoever thinks or says anything like that, and of course you're thinking that because they're gonna have Jacoby Brissett playing for like 13 games or whatever be the case there. So it's that makes a huge deal. It is a quarterback-driven league, and we'll see if Mitch Trubisky is going to be the driver, or Kenny Pickett's going to be the driver, or God forbid there's an injury and then things are all kind of in flux, because I don't know what you do. There's been good points made about you start Trubisky because you don't want to come back from Pickett, but I don't think you're ever coming back from Pickett. Even if there is injury, I know Mike Tomlin does, and some of these guys don't like to say somebody lost their job due to injury, but it's happened. It's happened with Bill Cowher. It happened with Tommy Maddox. Making way for Ben Roethlisberger. It's happened with Bill Belichick, with Drew Bledsoe giving way to Tom Brady. It does happen. And
Kaepernick, there's plenty of examples.
Yes, it's difficult. So that's where I'm going to leave it. We're going to put a bow on the show, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for putting up with our shenanigans and our technical difficulties. We were trying to entertain ourselves sometimes, even doing this way. It's just... wow, we had a lost episode, and then we had like dogs barking and things dropping and things like it's like, man, we can't say our piece about all of the stupidity that's surrounding the quarterback position in Pittsburgh, and we're far from over with that too. It's going to keep coming. We're not Mitch haters, we're not Kenny haters, we're not Mason haters.
I'm not a Mason hater. I love the guy. You want me money?
Yeah, hey. You love them all when they love you money, and you hate them when they don't, right?
I can be bought easily.
Anyways, folks, more dog barking. Yeah, more dog barking. Now it comes around the other way. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave us a rating wherever you are. That'll do it for us. They're trying to tell us, let's get this show on the road. So until next time, just a couple days away, pregame shows. Pittsburgh Steelers at Cincinnati Bengals. Tune in for that here on all of our platforms, wherever you're listening or watching from. My name's Joe. His name's Zach. Till next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.